In the 60s, the house at 1878 Page Avenue in East Cleveland stood out because it was lime green. It stands out now because it's the childhood home of a serial killer. In 2009, police discovered the bodies of 11 women decomposing in and around the home of Anthony Sowell, also known as the Cleveland Strangler. This is his story.
I know you tried to interview about Anthony Sowell, and you know what? I hate to say that. I'm not ashamed of it. I wish we have about 1 million of Anthony Sowell. I'm speaking the truth over here, okay? And I am in front 1, 2, 3, 4 cameras.
What do you mean by that?
He cleaned up the garbage. He cleaned up those garbage.
Who's the garbage?
The one he killed, those garbage.
It's story time with Susie Carmichael. As you know, today's video is going to be about Anthony Sowell, requested by Sowell. That's a little close. Anthony Edward Sowell was born August 19, 1959. He is a Leo. Y'all know what it is, okay? At this point, you already know how this goes. Leos, say it with me. Everybody else, these your people. He was raised in East Cleveland, Ohio. So, those your stomping grounds then, my girl or my guy. These your people too. Anthony was one of 7 children born to Claudia Garrison. Claudia was a single mother out here trying to raise her children, all 7 of them. Now, what was really unfortunate is one of Claudia's children and Anthony's siblings, which was his sister, she has 7 children of her own, and she unfortunately died young. So when his sister passes away, her 7 children move into the home with Claudia, his mother, and then her 7 kids. Altogether, it's 14 kids, okay? There once was a lady that lived in a shoe who had so many kids she didn't know what to do. Vibes is given that. Nevertheless, according to one of Anthony's nieces, which was one of the 7 children that had to move in with Claudia, this was a terrible time for them. The niece, Leona, claims that Claudia subjected them to terrible beatings, terrible abuse, all while her own 7 children watched from adjacent rooms. They were never treated as bad as she and her siblings were treated. In one incident in particular, Leona recalled that Claudia made her strip all of her clothes off in front of her 6 siblings and then Claudia's living 6 children, and she beat her with an extension cord until she bled. Now, granted, Claudia did not abuse her own children. Her relationship with Anthony in particular was very strained and not typical of a mother-son relationship or just a mother-child relationship in general. He often expressed to his sister that he felt like she did not love him, but according to the sister in later interviews, she said that Anthony was a very mean child. He was a very aggressive child. He wasn't affectionate at all. And although he would always tell her like he felt like their mother didn't love him, she got the sense that it was the other way around and that he didn't love their mother, which she sounded like an asshole and not very lovable anyway. So I can get that. When one of the nieces was just 10 years old, and I'm not sure if it was Leona, it did not specify, so I won't assume. But one of his nieces, when she was just 10 years old and Anthony was a little older, he began raping her. And he would do so on a daily basis, like every day for 2 years. And once he began this behavior, the other males in the house unfortunately also began participating in these acts. Now, it's unclear whether or not these incidents were reported to the mother, Claudia, or anybody, but even if they were, it doesn't sound like Claudia would have done anything to change anything or believed her, because she treated them terribly anyway. Y'all don't let me forget to blend this above my top lip, okay? Y'all know how I get down. Now, on January 24th, 1978, Anthony joins the U.S. Marines, and he goes on to have a 7-year Marine career, which he does exceptionally well. He received good conduct medals, all kind of certificates, ribbons, and letters of appreciation. He did really well in his military life. Like I said, his military career was nothing but good behavior and achievements up until his discharge in January of 1985. I just feel like being extra with the contour, okay? Just today, let me have this. Now, in 1989, just 4 years after he returned home from the military, Melvette Stockwell, who at the time was 3 months pregnant, she voluntarily goes to Anthony's house with him. She was a sex worker, and she thought that this would be just like any other date, just going to, Anthony's house to perform her tasks, get her money, and go. But when she tries to leave, Anthony stops her. He overpowers her. He refuses to let her leave. He bounds her feet and hands with zip ties and a belt, gags her with a rag. He begins to choke Melvette, and she is terrified. She's thinking, of course, she's going to die. For a brief moment, he stops and he tells Melvette to say a prayer because he's going to feed her and then he's going to kill her. And so, of course, she's like freaking out. First of all, what is this whole you gonna feed me and kill me thing? Because, bitch, I'm not on death row. Like, I don't understand. Like, the feeding is like an act of mercy, and then you gonna kill me? Like, what the... Excuse me, sir? Like, that makes no sense. But anyway, I don't make the news, I just report it. I'm just here to tell you the story. Anthony decides that before all of this is to go down, he's going to take a nap first. Now, once he falls asleep, Melvette is able to escape onto the roof of the house out of a window and signal neighbors to call police, which they do. And she makes it out of there alive, traumatized, I'm sure, but with her life, which is just good. Anthony is charged with rape, attempted rape, and kidnapping. He pled guilty to the charge of attempted rape, and as a result, he spends 15 years in prison, and he is released in 2005. Now, from there, he begins working in a factory for about 2 years until 2007. But then he is fired, and I don't know the tea there, but homeboy lost his job and started collecting unemployment benefits and hustling, selling scrap metal on the side. Now, around this time, he also began to become very reclusive, like very withdrawn, very to himself. One of the local corner store owners noticed that it was like almost a sudden thing where he became very unkept, like real withdrawn. He was just acting weird. He had like a couple of little twitches, just not himself. He wasn't looking like himself. He wasn't acting like himself. And it was very noticeable changes, but I mean, he was grown, so they just let him do him. Now, that same corner store owner did an interview. We'll see a piece of his interview later in this video. But in his interview, he stated that he was wondering what had happened to Anthony, like what was going on in his life that would make him change so drastically in such a short period of time, until one day he saw him purchasing crack in the neighborhood out of the bando, and he was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Now, around this time that Anthony's appearance started to look a little disheveled and unkept, the neighborhood also began to notice this very foul odor in the air, and they didn't know where it was quite coming from, but it was around Anthony's house. Real close. Lori Frazier, which happens to be the niece of Cleveland Mayor Frank Jackson, she began a relationship with Anthony shortly after his release from prison in 2005, and she actually moved in with him. Now, she too had noticed that the smell was pretty bad, and she thought that it was coming from within the house. But when she asked Anthony about it, he told her that it was Ray's sausage shop that was right next door. So from there, the rumors swarmed that, Ray's sausage shop, it stinks. Everybody is blaming the sausage shop for this terrible, terrible odor in the neighborhood. It's the summertime. Like, the shit is getting really, really bad because you know how trash is in the summertime. Like, it's just worse. There's some confusion about when Lori stopped living inside the house with Anthony. She did an interview where she mentioned that she moved out in 2007. But in a published article, she said that she lived there until 2008. So we don't know quite when she moved out. Nevertheless, she does eventually move out of the home with him, cease their relationship, and meanwhile, the smell is just still getting bad. It's just getting worse. So bad that neighbors started to complain to the health department. They're like, look, I don't know what kind of sausages they're making up in there, but the shit stinks and it needs to be checked out because we can't live like this. The health department comes out and the sausage shop is immaculate. Like, it's so clean. And that's another thing that kind of puzzled people in the neighborhood, because you can smell this odor, but when you walk into the shop, it's like super clean, and it just didn't make sense why it stinks so bad. The owner of the sausage shop actually believed that it was coming from his shop as well. He spent over $20,000 in renovations on new plumbing fixtures, new sewer lines to kind of help this odor, but literally nothing helped. Like, he would clean, keep it immaculate, but nothing helped. Like, this odor it just wouldn't go away. Meanwhile, Anthony's the newly single and little freaky and funky ass is setting up dating profiles online where he stated that he was a master looking for a submissive person to train, but he was, in actuality, he was just using this as a method to lure women to his home, which unfortunately he is successful in doing. In September of 2009, Anthony invited LaTundra Billups to his home for a drink. The two were familiar with each other from around the neighborhood. She lived in the neighborhood. He actually ran into her on his way home from buying 2 beers. He was trotting through the neighborhood with a little bag of beers, and Mama was like, what's up? Can I drink with you? And he's like, sure, let's go. So they returned to his home with, she's thinking they're about to have a nice little old drink and a good old time. And this wasn't out of the ordinary or out of the norm, because she had actually gone back to his house and drank with him on several occasions prior to this day. Typically when they hung out, they would hang out on the 3rd floor of the home. The 3rd floor is where he typically hung out the most, spent most of his time, entertained his guests. But this particular day, they went to the 2nd floor instead of the 3rd. And so she asked him, like, hey, why are we going to the 2nd floor instead of the hangout spot, the 3rd floor? And he tells her that they're going to the 2nd floor because the 3rd floor is dirty and he doesn't want to entertain guests amongst filth. And so it's better that they hang out on the 2nd floor. Now, as soon as they go into this room, she kind of got bad vibes. She noticed that there was an extension cord over on the floor, this little blanket laid on the floor, and it was, other than that, kind of empty. And so she was just like, But nevertheless, like I said, she had been to his house and hung out with him on several occasions before. She knew him from around the neighborhood, so she really didn't think much of it. She was just kind of, I guess, like, this shit ain't too much better than a little junk. But I guess they do crack and they take a couple of little drinks. They're flirting, and then Anthony leaves the room for a second. He goes to retrieve a chair, brings it back, sits it there. Then she stands up and he's like, turn around for me. She's taking this as flirting. She's thinking, she want to show herself off. Like, oh, he want to look at me. That wasn't it, girl. As soon as she turned around, he aggressively grabs her by the back of the neck, and she's pissed. So she spins back around and pushes him to kind of let him know, like, hey, no ma'am, no sir, this ain't it. He responds violently and he punches her in the face. And at that moment, she realized that he was on some other shit. Like, this is not gonna be like every other day that we kicked it. He forces her down onto her stomach, and then he wraps the extension cord around her neck and commences to choke her. And she passes out. Not long after that, she wakes up, and the first thing that she sees is Anthony sitting in a chair, like right in front of her. But he looks shocked to see that she is alive. He thought that he had killed her. But no, Mama had just passed out. He begins to tell her that he's now going to kill her and himself because he knows she's going to go to the police and he's going to go to jail. He doesn't want to go back to jail. Sir, if you didn't want to go to jail, don't do jail shit, okay? She tells him, no, I'm not going to go to, I'm not going to go to the police. I'm not going to call the police. You're not going to jail. I'm just not coming over here no more. I'm just not coming back. Because this was too much. He goes on to try to justify why he did what he did. He's telling her that he's going through a lot right now. Okay, just understand that I'm just not myself. I'm sorry. This is my sorry for 2004. I'm going through a lot. And meanwhile, she's just listening yeah, I feel you. I get that. I understand. I forgive you. I still ain't coming over here no more, but I forgive you. And he walks her to the door and allows her to leave. Mama wasn't no fool, because I would have done the same thing too. Oh no, we good. We cool, shit happens. We good. And we would have been good until we wasn't, okay? That, of course, was just her survival skills kicking in and telling her to just play it cool so she can make it alive, which worked. But as soon as she left the house, Mama ran straight down to the police, files a police report, and they're like, yeah, we'll look into it. We'll get back with you. 3 weeks go by before the detective even gives her a call in regard to the police report that she filed. Another week goes by before police respond and try to arrest him for his attack on this woman. And when they get to his house, he is not there. But girl, guess what was? Decomposing bodies, bitch. The ones that they have been smelling all throughout the neighborhood, but thought was coming from next door at Ray's sausage shop. Once they run across the first 2 bodies, they start up a search of the entire house. The bodies of 2 women were buried in a shallow grave in the basement of the home. 4 other women were found on the 3rd floor of the home. The 3rd floor, that was the hangout spot that he said was too dirty to hang out that day, that he brought LaTundra to. And they were stuffed off in these crawl spaces of the home. I'll insert to the actual footage of the crawl spaces. Not with the bodies, but just the spaces that he had the bodies in, and how unkept the house was. Now, after digging around in the backyard a little bit, they find the bodies of 3 more victims and then remains of a 4th. Police also found a bucket with a human skull inside the house. And the bucket had these non-human bite marks on it. Maybe, I don't know, maybe he got the bucket from somebody who had a dog. I don't know. All in all, this brings the body count to 11. Most of the victims were killed by manual strangulation. Many of them were still gagged and still had zip ties bound on their limbs when they were found. He had wrapped their bodies up in trash bags and plastic sheets and then just dumped them in random various parts of the backyard and the house, and was just living amongst these corpses as if they're... This is the thing. When you throw away a container that had raw meat or something in the trash, overnight that shit starts to stink. I don't see how people live inside of a house with bodies rotting. Girl, I can't even take apple cores rotting in my trash. How do you do it, sir? Why are you like this? Now, the first woman to be identified was 53-year-old Tanya Carmichael. She had disappeared more than a year prior to the discoveries, and she had been reported missing by her family. Her body was found buried in his backyard. She appeared to have been strangled and was identified through DNA evidence. Now, her mother had reported her missing in December of 2008, and this is November of 2009 that they discovered these bodies. Her disappearance was never investigated, at all. Her mother never heard anything back from detectives. They took no initiative to try to find her, which is sad and pathetic, but we know how this shit goes. The police and detectives sometimes. So the second victim to be identified was Felicia Fortsum. She was a 30-year-old woman who had disappeared 5 months earlier, and although she had been missing since June, her mother did not report her missing until the discoveries of these bodies in Anthony Sowell's home made public news. I don't know. She never had reported her daughter missing. No one had ever reported this girl missing, which is super sad. and she was able to be identified as one of his victims. The next woman to be identified was Crystal Dozier. She was a 38-year-old woman who had gone missing in May of 2007, the day after Mother's Day. She was the mother of 7 children, and you know what's really sad about hers? I watched the interview her son did, and he said that his relationship, because his mother was an addict, his relationship with her was very strained. She wasn't present like she should have been in his childhood. And he talks about how he would have to take care of his younger sibling and look after his sister, one sister in particular. And how at some point in time he didn't have money, of course, because he was a child. All he had was a jar of peanut butter. And he and his younger sister would eat a teaspoon for breakfast, and then he would give her a teaspoon in the afternoon and a teaspoon before bed. And that's literally all they would eat for days. Like, that is so sad. I don't want to, child, I'm about to cry. Because y'all know I'm a punk ass bitch, okay? I'm about to cry. So let me just stop. But I thought the details of her case particularly stuck out to me because, like I said, I watched this interview and he said he spoke to her the day before Mother's Day. And he was a little older at this point, but he remembered purposefully not calling her on Mother's Day because he felt like she wasn't a good mother. So he was just like, I'm not going to call her tomorrow. I'm not going to wish her happy Mother's Day because she wasn't a good mother. She wasn't there. And that is the day that she actually was attacked and she went missing. Like, imagine being a child and you feeling like, oh, I'm not going to call her on Mother's Day. And then this happens to her. Like, it's terrible. And he spoke about how he really freaked out when she went missing. And he never heard from her again. He felt so bad. And he felt so guilty. And then to find out that this is what happened to her. Like, this is why. Like, why you were being petty. This is what was happening to her. Granted, I'm not saying that in a negative way towards him. I'm just saying, like, I don't know. Let me just not. Because people will take what I'm saying the wrong way. And I don't have time for people to try to misconstrue what I'm trying to convey here. Because I don't even know if I'm explaining it right. She lived in the same neighborhood as Anthony. When her family reported her missing, the police didn't bother to do any kind of investigation. No research was done, nothing. The family, they posted flyers around the neighborhood. They constantly would call the hospitals to check and see, like, if she had been admitted, if something had happened. And they had no luck on finding anything out about where Crystal had disappeared to. Amy Hunter, she was a 47-year-old woman. She was a beautician and also a mother of 3. She was the next to be identified. Now, she did not live in the neighborhood where this all went down, but she did visit this neighborhood frequently. This was another instance where the family did not report her missing until after the news broke that 11 bodies had been found in Anthony's home, and she was positively identified as one. Michelle Mason was a 45-year-old woman who had gone missing in October of 2008. She did live in Anthony's neighborhood. Her family reported her missing as soon as she went missing, and a full investigation was conducted for her disappearance, but they didn't turn up anything. Records of missing persons going all the way back to Anthony's 2005 release from prison were searched, and DNA testing was conducted on the bodies found at his house to try to find a match. The Cleveland Police Department also reopened several cold cases from the late 80s. They had several cold cases of strangulation that matched his MO that were happening in the late 80s and stopped around the time that Anthony was arrested. So they thought, you know, this might have been this motherfucker. Now, during all of this investigating and trying to tie him to other crimes that he had possibly committed, 3 more rape victims had come forward, giving their account of what had happened to them that was similar to the stories that I told you about. All 3 had never reported the attacks because they felt like because they were addicts, no one would care, nothing would be done. And because they were lured to his house with the promise of smoking crack cocaine, they just felt like nothing would be done, nobody would care. Which, look at the 11 women that did not make it out. Most of them were reported missing and only 1 of them were investigated. I'm not saying that I agree that they should not have reported it, but I do understand why they felt like nothing would be done about it and why it would be a waste of time, because they weren't trying to do nothing about the women who were reported. Police issued a $12,000 reward for any information that would lead to his capture, because now homegirl is on the run. He's seen the news. He knows that they showed up to his house and found his dirty little secrets and that they were looking for his ass to lock him away. He wasn't trying to have it. A whole manhunt ensues. And meanwhile, 2 streets away from his home, Anthony meets up with his sister and tells her that everything in the media is true. Like, he did it all. He does not know why. He said that he just spazzed out and that he was, quote, all fucked up in the head. Sir, we know that. We know. All right, Captain Obvious. Like, we know that. He tells her that he loves her, that he's sorry, but he has to go because the police are looking for him, and then he walks off. Well, he thought he was going to call her later, then he walks off. But anyway, since the uncovering of the bodies in his home, he had been sleeping in the neighborhood in a bando. And if you don't know what a bando is, it's just an abandoned house. Slang term for abandoned house. In his same neighborhood. So he gives up his life on the run after 2 short days, and then he's arrested. At the time of his arrest, he was 50 years old and ugly. He was held on a $5 million bond. His trial was originally supposed to start June 2nd, 2010, but it was repeatedly delayed. The first time it was delayed to September 7th to allow his attorneys more time to prepare. Then to Valentine's Day of 2011, February 14th, then to May 2nd at the request of his attorneys yet again. They said they needed more time to comb through all of the evidence, all of the records, surveillance, because one of his neighbors had surveillance of when one of the ladies he attacked, the one that had escaped onto the roof and ricocheted down the side of the house. They have footage of that. Then it was pushed out again to June 6, 2011, this time at the request of the prosecution due to scheduling conflict. The trial eventually began in 2011 on June 6th, and it was a very emotional one. This beautiful lady, she took the stand as a witness to give her account of the day that she encountered Anthony and the horrors that she endured at his hands. Now, this encounter took place the month of her birthday. It was actually also the month of his birthday. She's a sex worker. She's standing outside of a bank and she's waiting on a customer. Anthony walks up and he tells her that it's his birthday and that nobody had told him happy birthday all day, right? And so she replies and she tells him, I don't celebrate birthdays, but happy birthday anyway. From there, they spark up a little conversation. They're talking, chatting about, I don't know what, just small talk, I guess. In that moment, she questioned whether or not it was a good idea to go with him or just wait on the next guy. And as she's talking to him, people are walking by, they're speaking to him, he's speaking back. That gives her a sense of comfort that he might be a good guy. He's well known around the neighborhood. It might be okay to go with him. And so she starts to walk with him. So they're walking through the neighborhood. He's still, you know, speaking to folks speaking to him. His popularity is making her a bit more comfortable. She said that she did not get any bad vibes from him. Like, nothing about him told her that he was a freaky little murderer. She does, however, recall feeling a bit uncomfortable when they get to the house. She recalls that there was a very eerie feeling when she went into the house. Like, the whole vibe inside the house was just like scary, just an eerie, creepy feeling. But she was there, and so I guess she was just gonna make her money and go. That was the plan. She said that he walked her over to the stairs, and she noticed the foul odor as soon as she came into the house. But she said when they got to the stairs, it was particularly terrible. And the further they went up the stairs, like, the stronger it got. But I guess she didn't want to be rude and tell him his house was funky and stank. And so she tried to ignore it. Now, mind you, if you didn't see it before, I'll insert it again. This is the condition of the house. This is the actual room he took her to and the crawl spaces that he had kept the bodies in. When they get upstairs, she asked him if they're going to smoke and drink. He tells her yes, asks if she has a pipe, and she tells him that she does. She hands it to him, and the two begin to smoke and drink and just socialize until suddenly he punches her in the head and demands that she takes off all of her clothes. So she passes out and he goes to sleep. The next morning, he wakes up. She asks him if she can go to the restroom, and he gives her permission to do so. And so she goes toward the bathroom, but she notices in the adjacent room, there's a body laying on a plastic sheet, and it's missing the hand. And she is like, what the fuck? She goes to the bathroom anyway, just trying to play it cool. The whole time she's in the bathroom, she is like freaking out. She's questioning her sanity at this point. Like, did I really just see what I thought I saw? Like, maybe that wasn't real. Maybe I'm tripping. Maybe I'm hallucinating. Maybe the crack was bad. I don't know. She is terrified, as any of us would be, I'm sure. Now, she figures at this point, it's no way he's going to allow her to make it out of this alive. But she's like, if there is a chance that she is and he plans on letting her go, like, she cannot let him know that she saw what she saw. So she pulls herself together and she comes out of the bathroom and pretends as if she didn't see what she saw in the other room, that everything is fine, because she doesn't want to alarm him. These people literally cut the grass yesterday, but now they're back to trim the hedges. Girl, why didn't y'all do this all in one sweep? So y'all know shit at this point. It's not a Brittney video unless there's some unsolicited background noise. Today it's the landscaping. Now she's coming out of the bathroom with every reason and right to be freaking out, but homie is the one freaking out. He is paranoid. He's pacing. He's like, you're going to tell? I know you're going to tell. I'm going to jail. Like, this is it for me. She, being very smart and in full survival mode, she's like, no, I'm not going to tell. Like, it's okay. I'm not going to tell. It wasn't that bad. It was just a little rougher than usual. And I'm not trying to be funny here. That's literally what she said in her, in her testimony in court. And she's able to convince him that, she's not going to report him. And he walks her down the stairs and to the front door and opens it. And she is shocked that it actually worked, and he allows her to just walk right out of the house, like right out. Immediately she calls the police and she tells them what happened, and they tell her that she needs to come down to the police station to file a police report. Now this is where it got tricky for her, the same way that it did for the other 3 ladies that never reported it. She felt like she was an addict and that it wasn't a good idea to go to the police station. And so she never files the police report. She just leaves it at that and pretty much just drops it. Now that Anthony is in police custody, Anthony is charged with 11 counts of aggravated murder, 74 counts of rape and kidnapping. He's also charged with tampering with evidence and abuse of a corpse. Now, at first he pled not guilty by reason of insanity, and then he later changed it to just a regular old not guilty. On July 22nd, 2011, he is convicted on all but 1 count against him, which included the murders of all 11 women that were found in his house. The jury recommended the death penalty. Rightfully so. I recommend it too.
Unanimously find that the sentence of death should be imposed upon the defendant, Anthony Sowell. All 12 jurors have signed their name to this verdict form and have not signed the contrary form.
And the judge upheld the recommendation. And since September 14th, 2011, Mr. Anthony Sowell has been sitting on death row, and rightfully so. Bars. I haven't done any highlight in a minute, child. I don't even see the highlight. What's going on, mama? Did you expire? Now, in November of 2011, Anthony's attorneys, they filed an appeal with the Supreme Court of Ohio. His original execution date was set for October 29, 2012. But in March of 2012, a motion for a stay of execution was filed, and the motion was granted because there was an appeal that was pending, and so it was granted pending final disposition of an appeal. His lawyers appealed to have his conviction, his death sentence, and his conviction overturned on the grounds that Anthony did not receive a fair trial because of all the media coverage. They said that the media attention was overwhelming. It generated thousands of news stories, and the local coverage was particularly damaging to his image, baby boy image. They also claimed that he had received lousy legal representation before, and that he had all new lawyers. His lawyers before were incompetent, and that they did it wrong. They said that the lawyers before should have had him plead guilty and own up to what he had done, and then put their focus more so on avoiding him getting the death penalty. And they didn't do that. They just went, well, we didn't do it, not guilty, knowing they had all this evidence against him and that he would never win. Now, 4 years go by, and then April of 2016, the Supreme Court hears the arguments from both Anthony's new attorneys and the DA representing the state of Ohio. His attorneys argued that it was not out of reason to ask that his death sentence be commuted to life in prison without the possibility of parole. They felt like that was reasonable, that the death penalty was not Baby, yes it is. They argued that his previous counsel made so many errors that they should be given a retrial, in fact, and that the case should be sent back down to his little local county in Ohio, and he should be retried and given a second chance. Unlike these women were given a second chance at life, I'm just saying. His attorney stood up there and said, frankly, we blew it. Like, that was literally his quote to the Supreme Court. And he wanted another try. Now, the state's argument was that, hey, Anthony never even denied his guilt. Although he did put in a not guilty plea, he never denied that he didn't carry out these acts. And they said that with the nature of these heinous crimes and all of the evidence against him, he was very much deserving of the death sentence. Child. And that's what I believe too. But you know, they ain't asked me. I'm just telling you what happened when they linked up. On December 8, 2016, the Ohio Supreme Court rejected his appeal in full support of his conviction and his death sentence. Now in May 2017, Anthony made yet another attempt to appeal his conviction with the U.S. Supreme Court this time. The U.S. Supreme Court said, girl, we ain't even trying to hear it. Like, they refused to even review his appeal. They was just like, girl, next case. In February of 2018, the Ohio Supreme Court denied a request by Anthony to reopen his appeal. It's like, Miss Girl, just let it go. Elsa said it best, bitch, let it go. But he didn't. He was denied yet another appeal. He was actually denied another appeal this year in May. So he's currently sitting in a cell rotting away right now as I film this and as you watch this, my girl. Waiting on the
electric chair.
The state has not set him a new execution date, which this case is one of Cleveland, Ohio's most notorious crime cases, and I can see why. I'm sure that's not surprising to any of us. The city has actually paid over $1.3 million to victims and their families to settle lawsuits over how detectives handled accusations or didn't handle accusations and missing persons reports. Netflix actually did a documentary called, I think it was Netflix, or it's on Prime Video. I know for sure I just watched it on Prime Video. It's called Unseen. I'll link it down below. Somebody uploaded it to YouTube too, so I'll put a link to the video down below. You can check it out if you want to. It has two of the women that I talked about in this story, LaTondra and Vanessa. LaTondra Billups and Vanessa Gray, and they give full accounts of what happened to them. It has footage of like his house, court date, his trial. Like, there's a lot of information if you want to watch it, but it's very sad, just to let you know. I was disturbed by the fact that Sam Little in the last video said that he didn't kill no senators or journalists or anybody important really. He just killed sex workers and drug addicts, and he stayed in the ghettos. Like, child, no matter where you come from, what your past is, what your present is, or where your future lies, like, we all somebody. We all matter. Like, these women were someone's daughter. They were someone's mother. They were someone's sister, cousin, friend, loved one. Like, I hate this idea or this notion that because someone's an addict or because they're a sex worker or because they did some shit that you wouldn't do or you don't agree with, that they're less than. The value of all lives is equal. So if you're somebody who struggled with addiction, who currently struggles with addiction, or are judged by what society deems as less than or that society frowns upon, then fuck these folks, girl. You are still somebody. You still matter. And like I said, fuck them. I don't believe for a second that you don't matter and you don't count because of something you did or how you lived your life. Like, no, you're valuable. We're all valuable. We all have value, equal value, okay? We are almost at 50,000 and I'm so excited. Like, this is so surreal and insane, and I'm so happy, and I'm thankful for all 43,000 of you guys. I love y'all so much. Shout out to Absol again. Thank you so much for recommending the video. If there's a story that you know of that's not so known, drop down in the comments, let me know. I got a list going right now because when y'all leave the comment, I'll add it to this list of notes in my phone, and honey, we got a lot of people to cover. So just be patient, girl, because your video suggestion might pop up in the feed. Don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, share, so we can get to that 50K mark. I told y'all I'm trying to get to 100,000 or over 100,000 by the end of the year. Like, that's my goal. Half the year gone. We halfway there, so we can do it. And you can help me get there by sharing this video, liking it for the algorithm, because the more likes, the more comments, whether they're good or bad, honey, they help boost my algorithm and show me some more people. I'm popping up in recommendations, girl, and they just, our little family is gonna grow and we're gonna hit that mark. And I just appreciate you and love you so much, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.